We now come to the motion relating to the Holocaust Memorial Bill, allocation of time. Minister to move.
Beg to move.
The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We will now move on to the next item of business. And the clerk will read out the next item of business.
Holocaust Memorial Bill, consideration of Lord's amendments.
Now,
I can inform the House that the Lord's amendment does not engage the Commons' financial privilege. We will begin with the government motion to disagree with Lord's Amendment 1. I call the Minister to move the motion. Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House disagrees with the Lords in their amendment. First, I am grateful to members of both the Commons and the Lords who have so diligently scrutinised the bill throughout its passage. I thank the noble Lord Khan of Burnley for taking the bill through the other place and for being so thorough in his approach. Before I address the amendments tabled by the Lord, I'd like to take a moment to remind the House, Madam Deputy Speaker, why we introduced this bill in the first place. There is a long-standing cross-party commitment to establish a new National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre. We do this to mark a profound and dark moment in our history, to remember the sheer loss of humanity, and to continue to learn the lessons day after day, generation after generation. This simple three-clause bill was introduced in February 2023 to enable us to make progress in delivering this. The bill does two things. Firstly, it authorises expenditure on the construction, operation, maintenance or improvement of the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre. And secondly, it seeks to remove a statutory obstacle to it being built next door in Victoria Tower Gardens should it receive planning consent. The bill does not provide the government with planning powers to build the Memorial and Learning Centre. They are being sought through the separate statutory planning process. Turning to the amendment which is before us today. On the face of it, the Lord's amendment looks uncontroversial, and I have absolutely no doubt it is well-intentioned. However, the government cannot accept the amendment. In short, the amendment seeks to deal with matters which are not part of this bill and which are more properly dealt with elsewhere. Following debates in the other place, there have been constructive discussions with those leading support for the amendment to consider how best to proceed. In light of those discussions, I want to assure this House that the government's aim in establishing a National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre in line with the cross-party consensus since 2015 is to increase understanding of the Holocaust and of anti-Semitism. There must be no question of Learning Centre deviating from this purpose.
Minister, and I declare a sort of interest in that many members of my family were murdered in the Holocaust. What I understand the meaning of the term Holocaust to be is the Nazi mass extermination of the Jews during their period in power, both in their own country and in the countries they occupied. Now, I haven't been following the progress of the bill as closely as I should have done, but I get the impression that there's some move away from keeping it specific to that terrible crime and to widening it to cover massacres in general and other terrible racial crimes. I think the intention of this bill for this museum was that it was the extermination of the Jews by the Nazis and their associates. Can she confirm that that is still the situation?
Minister.
Thank you to the honourable member. I can confirm that's the case, and I will be very clear and explicit about both the intention and what we will do to ensure that we enshrine that intention. The Learning Centre will provide a solid, clear, historical account of the Holocaust, leaving no visitors in any doubt about the unprecedented crimes perpetrated against Jewish people. The content for the Learning Centre is being developed by a leading curator supported by Martin Winston, the Holocaust historian and educator, and by an academic advisory group. With their help, we will ensure the content is robust, truthful and fearless. It will stand as a vital rebuttal to Holocaust denial and distortions in all its form. Delivery of the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre is being supported by the UK Holocaust Memorial Foundation. We value the work of the Foundation, which has been steadfast in its determination to build the memorial and to create a learning centre in which the story of the Holocaust is told powerfully, unflinchingly and honestly. We aim to make sure that the body responsible for the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre has the independence and the permanence which the Commission sought. We will provide the operating body with governing documents that are clear and specific, leaving no doubt that the Learning Centre has been established to provide education about the Holocaust and about anti-Semitism. We will also ensure appropriate processes for the appointment of governing body members and provide support so they have a clear understanding of their role. The governing body will be permitted to hold fundraising and commemorative events and public lectures as long as it is appropriate to the intent and the purpose of the Learning Centre. It will be for the trustees to determine what activities are consistent with the aims of the Memorial and Learning Centre. So I hope I have shown that there is no disagreement between the government and those who wish to ensure that the Learning Centres focus very clearly on the history of the Holocaust. No additional clauses are needed on the face of the bill to achieve what we all want to see. Moreover, there are inevitable risks in seeking to prescribe too narrowly what the Learning Centre is permitted to do. The better way to proceed is to put in place clear and robust governance arrangements for the Learning Centre, to place on the trustees the responsibility for ensuring the facts of the Holocaust and the long history of anti-Semitism are explained clearly and honestly for this and for future generations. And our aim must now be to pass this bill and to move ahead as quickly as possible to establish the National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre.
The question is that this House disagrees with the Lords in their Amendment 1. Shadow Secretary of State, James Peckham.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you. As this bill returns to the House, it does so at an important time of year. Next week, we mark Holocaust Memorial Day, when communities across the country will pause to remember the 6 million Jewish men, women and children who were murdered during the Holocaust. As a former Home Secretary, I've seen firsthand the strength and dignity with which Jewish communities have preserved the memory of the Holocaust. And as Foreign Secretary, I saw that also in Israel and in other countries. But the people who have done so do it not only to honour those who were murdered, but also to educate future generations. And that act of remembrance is a service to the whole country. And it is why education is essential if the memory of the Holocaust is to endure, and if we are to confront anti-Semitism wherever and whenever it appears. Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill has taken much longer to progress than any of us would have wished. I am therefore pleased that the Government has chosen to take it forward. The primary purpose of this bill is clear and narrow in scope. It is about the Holocaust, and it is about ensuring that the lessons of the Holocaust are learned and that history is preserved for future generations. And on that point, there is strong and genuine cross-party agreement across both houses. And I want to thank the Minister for meeting with me and for listening carefully to the concerns that were raised from our side of the House. I think those discussions have been constructive, and I welcome the seriousness with which they have been approached. There has been contention during the passage of this bill, and there have been strong views expressed about the location of the memorial, about the security of the memorial, and the design of the memorial. And those debates reflect the importance of this project and the desire to ensure that it is done properly. However, the issue before us today relates to the purpose of the Learning Centre. Conservative and cross-bench peers have been clear in expressing their concern. They have sought assurance that the Learning Centre will exist for one purpose only, and that purpose is to provide education about the Holocaust and about anti-Semitism. I welcome the assurances that the government has now provided on these points, in particular the commitment that the Learning Centre will be focused exclusively on the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, and that there must be no question about it drifting from that mission or that purpose in future years. I also welcome the commitment that the governing documents of the future operations body will make this purpose clear. These assurances matter. This memorial is intended to last for generations, and it must have a clear mission that future trustees and future governments cannot dilute or reinterpret. Madam Deputy Speaker, in light of those assurances, we will not be pressing this matter to a division. And that reflects the progress that has been made through constructive discussions both in this House, in this House and in the other place. But I do want to make one thing clear, one final point clear. Those assurances must be carried through, and the good faith of those who have entered into the conversations need to be rewarded. I also recognise concerns about the design have been raised throughout the passage of the bill, both directly with me and with the government. And whilst those matters fall outside of the scope of the legislation before us today, I hope that ministers have listened to those concerns and will ensure those concerns are communicated more widely to those involved with the construction of the education centre. If this House is to create a lasting national Holocaust memorial, it must be clear in its purpose and it must be faithful to its promise.
Chris Vins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I start by thanking the Minister and indeed the Shadow Secretary of State for their speeches in opening this important debate. And can I start by saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I absolutely welcome this bill and its aims to create a lasting memorial to those 6 million people who lost their lives in what was probably the most devastating event in recent history. And also, of course, those who did survive and carry those scars with them, and of course also their families. Although I do obviously recognise what my right honourable friend has said about the bill and the amendment in particular, and then also particularly I would say the need to move this bill forward at pace. I'm attending our Holocaust Memorial Day event in Harlow at the weekend, and the theme for Holocaust Memorial Day 2026 is Bridging Generations. And the reason this is so important is because we need to recognise that the responsibility of remembrance can't just end with survivors. When we came together in this House last year to recognise the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, we all recognise that this will be one of the last significant anniversaries where veterans of that terrible conflict would be with us. We must also recognise that as we move forward, those survivors who did survive the terrible events that happened in the Holocaust will no longer be with us, but we must carry their flame. We must continue to remember. And building a bridge between memory and action, between history and hope for the future, and education about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism is hugely important for this reason. Like I'm sure many honourable members and right honourable members across the House, I have visited Auschwitz and seen the horrors of the Holocaust. But what we perhaps don't see so often are the events that led to this. I think about Kristallnacht. I think about the ghettos. It has been a real pleasure to meet on a fairly regular basis with my local rabbi in Harlow, Rabbi Irit, to talk about how the Jewish community in Harlow is doing. And I'm pleased to hear that the Jewish community in my constituency haven't experienced anti-Semitism. However, we must always be mindful. And I want to particularly pay tribute to Rabbi Irit for the work that she's done working with faith groups from across my constituency. I was sadly unable for personal reasons to attend this year's interfaith service that she ran at Harlow Synagogue, but I'm looking forward to attending it next year. An opportunity for the Christian community, the Muslim community, the Hindu community to come together to show that we are at one to fight the scourge of anti-Semitism and other forms of racism. And I'm looking forward to standing with her and other religious groups, other religious leaders in Harlow at the weekend to recognise Holocaust Memorial Day. We must never forget the evils of the Holocaust, and I'm really pleased that this government is taking that very seriously, and this bill is a huge part of that. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats, Marie Goldman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Holocaust begins to fade from living memory, it becomes ever more vital that the next generations continue to be properly educated about it and that the victims are commemorated with dignity and with care. The theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day, Bridging Generations, reminds us that remembrance of the Holocaust does not end with the survivors. The responsibility now passes to all of us. We must engage with the past so its lessons are not lost in the future. The work of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust encourages us to honour the legacies of all who were murdered in genocides, including those who have no family left to remember them, not through bloodlines, but through education and memorial. A Holocaust Memorial and Education Centre in the heart of London would be a powerful, permanent commitment to that responsibility. 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, Roma, disabled people, LGBTQ+ individuals, were murdered in the Holocaust, showing where hatred can lead. The genocide since show we haven't learned enough. Last year, hate crimes increased across our country, fueled by political extremism. When we say never again, it cannot be empty words. It must be our commitment to stand united against hatred. Alongside my friends, the Right Honourable Member for Kingston and Surbiton and the members for Cheltenham and Guildford, I have met with the Board of Deputies, the Jewish Leadership Council, the Community Security Trust and the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust to discuss the alarming rise in anti-Semitism and how we must respond to it. The Liberal Democrats believe no one should feel scared or anxious when going to their place of worship, which is why in our manifesto we pledged funding for protective security measures for places vulnerable to hate crime and terror attacks. While we are devastated that this is necessary, we are pleased that the government has increased protections for synagogues and ask that they continue to work hand in hand with these organisations for the safety and security of all Jews in the United Kingdom. This memorial, Madam Deputy Speaker, presents a vital opportunity to challenge anti-Semitism through education, and we recognise the work that the House of Lords has put in to safeguard its educational purpose. But we must ensure that robust security measures are in place so that people can visit this memorial safely and without fear. It is also key that we deliver this memorial in a timely manner. The Conservative government committed to this project following the findings of the Holocaust Commission in 2015. It is unacceptable that 11 years later, construction has yet to begin. In 2023, Holocaust survivor Manfred Goldberg said, "I was 84 when Prime Minister David Cameron first promised us survivors a national Holocaust memorial in close proximity to the Houses of Parliament."
Would Madam Babarinde give way?
I will give way, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving way. One of my constituents, Kitty Hart-Moxon, actually helped to set up the Holocaust Educational Trust and will be 100 this year. And as you said, that bridging that gap is she's handing that over to Peter, Maura and the family to keep that going. But don't you think it'd be a wonderful tribute that she'd be able to see this memorial and show how important that is to the people of Great Britain?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention. I couldn't agree more. Manfred Goldberg went on to say, last month I celebrated my 93rd birthday and I pray to be able to attend the opening of this important project. Tragically, Manfred passed away on the 6th of November at the age of 95. My thoughts are with his family. Manfred was an extraordinary man who gave so much to Holocaust remembrance and education in the United Kingdom. As a nation, we must continue this legacy and ensure this memorial and education centre is built through proper process, with careful planning, strong security and quick delivery. In doing so, we commemorate the 6 million Jewish people murdered in the Holocaust, honour survivors and create a space that truly educates future generations, standing as a lasting commitment to remembrance.
Sir Edward Leigh.
Madam Deputy Speaker, there's universal recognition of the gravity of the Holocaust. It's widely and wisely regarded as the greatest crime in human history, which is precisely why this memorial should proceed only on the basis of broad consensus. No one wishes to create division around Holocaust commemoration. Yet there is demonstrably no consensus within the Jewish and local community about the Learning Centre itself or how it should be used. This was evidenced by the 2018 Times letter signed by 8 Jewish peers expressing deep reservations about the current proposal. The original decision to site the memorial in Victoria Tower Gardens was made with good intentions, including the recognition of the importance of the Holocaust through proximity to Parliament. But it was taken without prior consultation or proper investigation and was opposed by the local council. Subsequent scrutiny has revealed serious flaws within the site, and you can't have a discussion of what the Learning Centre is used for without understanding that. And I've taken part in several of these debates, including the last time we debated this with Sir Peter Bottomley, the former Father of the House, on the day the general election was called. And no satisfactory answers have ever been given. The plans are for a substantial underground structure on ancient marshland beside the Thames. The water table is known to rise sharply after heavy rainfall. Significant flooding occurred there with recent memory. Do we want to have to wet vac our Holocaust memorial every few years? We've had no answers on this point. Victoria Tower Gardens is a protected public park, protected by statute. It's maintained by the Royal Parks, which has never supported a memorial on this site. The chairman of the Royal Parks warned that it risks damaging one of the area's few open green spaces and setting a dangerous precedent. Statutory protections dating back to the 1900 Act of Parliament are being undermined with very little debate. The park can realistically accommodate only a modest memorial without destroying its character. The current design would fundamentally alter the park through an 80-metre ramp, a wide moat dividing the space, and the replacement of large areas of grass with paving. Now, quite rightly, the intention is for large numbers of visitors, particularly school children, to attend the National Holocaust Memorial. No credible plans exist to manage coach traffic, drop-off points or parking, compounding existing pressures on Millbank. Local opposition is well documented, including from the Thorney Islands Society. For residents and regular users, the park would largely cease to function as a neighbourhood green space, ordinary activities becoming inappropriate in such a situation. Victoria Tower Gardens may also be needed to support the ongoing restoration and renewal of the Palace of Westminster. Reducing flexibility now risks increasing costs and constraining future options. Now, let's talk about the purpose of this. And I've been to these Holocaust memorials. The most impactful Holocaust memorial internationally is the Washington model, which I visited. Their Holocaust Memorial Museum is immensely successful because it prioritises education through a dedicated museum that confronts the scale and the reality of the crimes. The most meaningful memorial we can offer is sustained education, ensuring young people understand the Holocaust fully and that its memory is never diminished. Had the Learning Centre been established years ago at the Imperial War Museum, as we've constantly suggested, and as the Imperial Museum we want to do, I'm going to finish, if you don't mind. Hundreds of thousands of visitors could already have benefited from it, and there would have been no delay. Now, the House of Lords has wisely passed an amendment clarifying that the sole purpose of any learning centre must be the provision of education about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. It's a mystery to me why the government opposed this and why they have imposed strict time limits on debate. This much-desired memorial should be the result of clear consensus, not imposed in a way that stifles discussion. And I'm quite suspicious of why the government is opposing this wise amendment from the House of Lords. One of the reasons why an underground learning centre is inappropriate. This is not a proper museum. You know, I've been to the memorial in Israel, in Washington. These are huge structures. You're taken across the whole process. You can't understand the Holocaust unless you understand its beginnings and how people came to abide this to be filled with this horrible hatred. It's basically just a bunker. It's totally inappropriate. It's also a security risk. You're going to have armed guards on it. You're going to have railings. Just imagine the terrible nature of some appalling atrocity or terrorist atrocity that might be committed there. It's just simply an inappropriate location. And I suspect, now I don't know, but I suspect the reason why the government are resisting this amendment is they are actually worried that this bunker, this totally inappropriate underground structure, which is not a proper museum, might become a target. Might become a target. And I would suggest, all right, I'll give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's not that the government is not giving way. The government is showing leadership by negotiating with other parties to find consensus in this chamber. That is something we should celebrate. I'm ashamed that 81 years after the Second World War ended, we still do not have a national memorial. And the far of the House is talking about more debate, more time wasting, and more Holocaust survivors dying before we even start work. Does he not recognise the need for this memorial? And placing it right next to the home of democracy in the UK absolutely makes sense to celebrate what we did well during the Second World War in terms of protecting the Jews, but also what we got wrong.
Sir Edward Leigh.
The whole point of what, it's not just me, by the way, it's a large part of the Jewish community. We want a proper museum of the type that exists in Washington. And this, I'm afraid, is not a proper museum. It's a small underground structure in an inappropriate place, difficult to secure. If the government and the previous government had proceeded with consensus and wanted to build an aesthetic memorial which could have given proper tribute to the people who died, this could all have been passed years ago. The whole debate has been around the underground learning centre. It has not been around the memorial. Everybody accepts there should be a memorial. Everybody wants to have a proper museum. This is not a proper museum. And I'm just curious, frankly, as to why the government is resisting this perfectly sensible amendment from the House of Lords. And I think there is a real danger, actually, that in order to allay security concerns, the whole purpose of this learning centre may indeed drift from the Holocaust. May indeed drift. And that would be, I think, extremely regrettable. So I'm sorry if I've irritated the honourable gentleman, but I think that this is a debate, and I think that we're all entitled to express a point of view.
Josh Babarinde.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the spirit of this amendment. I welcome, of course, this bill. I welcome the assurances that the Minister gave. And notwithstanding some differences of opinion, I do welcome the civility with which this debate is taking place, which is exactly what needs to happen on such a sensitive issue. Madam Deputy Speaker, I speak today not only to this House, but to those gathering back home in Eastbourne on Holocaust Memorial Day 2026, the 27th of January. And on behalf of our town and those far beyond it, I pay huge tribute to remarkable Eastbourne resident and Holocaust survivor, Dorrit Oliver Wolfe, whose tireless Holocaust education work as a survivor herself ensures that future generations never forget. She's a leading light, whether by facilitating events like Holocaust Memorial Day in Eastbourne, school visits, or even as a published author, sharing her experiences through her book, Yellow Star to Pop Star, or sharing her story to the masses of Channel 4 viewers when she appeared on First Dates in 2021 and told us more about her experiences. We thank Dorrit so dearly for her advocacy, for her service, and for her fabulousness. Dorrit's example serves as a real testament to the need for the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre that is the subject of this Holocaust Memorial Bill going through Parliament, literally as we speak. Education is our most powerful defence against hatred's return. And the theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day, for a better future, carries such profound weight. In that spirit, we remember the 6 million Jewish lives stolen and all victims of Nazi persecution. We honour their memory by confronting hatred wherever it emerges, including in the face of genocide in our world today. But with great sadness, that confrontation requires vigilance. From the anti-Semitic attack on Bondi Beach to the targeting of Jewish people worshipping at their synagogue in Greater Manchester, hatred persists. And in Eastbourne, the event organisers of our Holocaust Memorial Day commemorations this year have worked so hard to hold an event as safe as possible. In fact, I directly requested that Sussex Police strengthen its officer presence at the event to reinforce that. And while I'm grateful that the police have agreed to review its presence and have deployed specialist officers with significant capabilities accordingly, it is a shameful tragedy that in 2026, Holocaust memorial gatherings still require the extensive protection necessary today. Yeah. Our society, at home and abroad, has so much further to go. Legislation like that before Parliament can take us some way, but defeating prejudice requires each of us in our communities, our schools, our daily interactions to challenge anti-Semitism and division. And so I say to those gathering in Eastbourne, thank you for remembering, for standing against hatred and for choosing a better future. As we embrace the path forward, as we light candles of remembrance, let us move towards the tolerance and humanity that the Holocaust victims and survivors were denied. We will never forget.
Susan Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Since the horrific attacks of 7th of October, we've seen a sharp and sustained increase in anti-Semitic abuse in Britain. Last year, a report commissioned by the Board of Deputies of British Jews found widespread failures to address anti-Jewish discrimination across public life, including within the NHS, education, the arts and policing. This matters today and is not a problem of the past. The Community Security Trust recorded over 3,500 anti-Semitic incidents in the UK in 2024, one of the highest totals on record. I also understand that some will try to tie what is happening here to Israel's actions in Gaza. People may hold strong views about that conflict, but we must be absolutely clear. British Jews are not responsible for the actions of any government overseas. They are people trying simply to live their lives regardless of their faith or community identity. They should never be blamed, targeted, or held account for events beyond their control. This is why remembrance must go hand in hand with education. Holocaust survivors are fewer each year, as we've heard. We cannot rely on living testimony alone. We need strong, honest education about the Holocaust, about anti-Semitism, and about how quickly lies and conspiracy theories can spread, especially online. The truth is that hatred is often fuelled by misinformation and lack of understanding. Today, conspiracy theories travel faster than ever, amplified by social media and algorithms that drive people towards ever more extreme content. Given the ease with which hate can spread online, a memorial linked to a learning centre, one that helps people understand the Holocaust and confront anti-Semitism, has real value. As we approach Holocaust Memorial Day, I hope the House can send a clear message. We remember, we educate, and we will stand against anti-Semitism and prejudice in all its forms, wherever it's found. Thank you.
Steve Barclay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise very briefly because I agree both with the tenor of the debate and also the tone in which colleagues across the House have quite rightly highlighted the sheer horror of the Holocaust, the importance of remembering its sheer scale, and the challenges, particularly as the member for Chelmsford highlighted in the context of rising anti-Semitism, or indeed as the member for Eastbourne spoke about in terms of as fewer survivors with lived experience are there to share their stories. I also wanted to address 2 points that the member, the Father of the House, the member for Gainsborough, raised. He raised, if I could surmise, I think, a point firstly on security. And I simply don't know, I say to my right honourable friend, I simply don't know where the best site would be from a security perspective. It may be between Parliament, which is obviously a heavily secured site, and MI5 is an appropriate location for a site that will always carry security risks. It may be there are other sites that are better, and I defer to those with far more expertise than me on that. But I also note both the current Father of the House and the previous Father of the House spoke about concerns with the design of the memorial. And it's also, I think, reflective of the fact that the Father of the House is the former chair of the Public Accounts Committee. And I always have a slight concern, not obviously the principle we all agree on, the importance of this. And again, as the member for Chelmsford spoke, 11 years now, there is a need to make progress. So it is not that I call for delay. I certainly don't. This is important. We need to get on with it. We need to deliver it. But I think it is fair to say that when the House is all agreed on an issue, there is a danger that issue is not sufficiently scrutinised. And I note the current Father and the previous Father of the House raised concerns. He speaks of a former chair of the PAC. I currently chair the Finance Committee. Now, the Finance Committee is not responsible for restoration and renewal in this House, and the House will come on to debate that. But I think I've already seen, Madam Deputy Speaker, and you have huge experience of that programme. But there are already very serious concerns emerging around the challenges of restoration and renewal, and indeed that programme has been repeatedly delayed and seen significant cost overruns. And we have a design here where a significant proportion of the construction is underground in a very constrained site. And the Minister, who again I think opened the debate extremely well, and I agreed with much of what she said, but she spoke about giving the trustees, as it seemed to me, quite a lot of discretion. And so I simply wanted to say how important I think on this programme that there is very real transparency around some of the challenges that I fear will emerge with the design of this programme, with the construction, the risk of cost overruns, the constraints and compromises. And could I just bring that alive, bring one question as an example. This site was constrained and Parliament, as is its right, chose to vote to remove that constraint. When I look at the R&R programme, I'm told that the Children's Education Centre has to move because of an identical constraint. And the interaction between this programme and the R&R programme, I suspect, is something that will come before the House in due course and raise some challenges. And indeed, the House hasn't even decided on R&R and things like what happens with the Education Centre. And so my purpose in speaking is the importance of remembering The unbelievable horror of the Holocaust cannot be overstated. But when the House, if you just let me finish, when the House all agrees on something, the question is, have the designs been sufficiently scrutinised? And therefore, my plea to the Minister is to have a commitment around the transparency of that and how some of the pressures which I foresee will emerge will be communicated in a very timely way.
Yeah, well said.
Minister, with leave the House to wind up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With leave of the House, I'd like to thank honourable members on all sides for their contribution to this important debate. I appreciate that while the Government's commitment to establish a new National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre has cross-party support, there are strongly held views in many quarters about how that vision is made a reality. And we are committed to listening and to engaging as we move forward. I'd like to start by thanking the Honourable Member for Braintree, both for the work that his party did to initiate this important scheme and this bill, and for maintaining cross-party consensus and working constructively with us to find solutions in order to move forward. He was right to focus our minds on the purpose of this bill and on the key purpose and mission of the Learning Centre. My honourable friend, the member of Harlow, was absolutely right to remind us for the need of pace and urgency. This was initiated in 2015. It has taken far too long to get to this point. And as he pointed out, as we delay, as we take time, the hope, the ambition that the last survivors could see the construction of this Memorial and Learning Centre is further out of sight. So we are determined to move at pace with construction, should we get support of the House, to conclude this whilst the last remaining survivors are still here. The member for Chelmsford gave a powerful contribution highlighting the reason for this again and the need to constantly remember so that never again is not just a hollow slogan, it is not just empty words. And she's right to highlight that we do this and we have this debate in the context of a rising tide of hate and division that we're seeing across our country. And so the collective task before us is to make sure that we move, that we deliver, that we remember and we learn for this generation and future generations. I will give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I think it is timely just to remind us all that if we held a minute's silence for every person killed in the Holocaust, we would be silent for 11.5 years. It's right and proper that we have a national memorial. Can she just reassure this House anti-Semitism is not confined to history, it is happening day and daily, whether it be attacks at football matches or in our streets around us. Our Jewish friends face hostility simply for being Jews. So as this centre remembers the Holocaust, will it also deal with the anti-Semitism that is very prevalent today in our society? And will those Jewish friends feel confident that they will not be attacked when they go to the centre?
Minister.
Thank you to the member for raising that point. She is absolutely right. We are seeing increased anti-Semitism. We see case after case in all of our communities. I spend a lot of time talking to the Jewish community, to our faith leaders. I hear the fear, I hear the anxiety, I hear the worry. And we as a government are absolutely committed to responding to that and to making sure that we are taking action so that our Jewish friends in this country feel safe and feel that they can live their lives without the fear of attack, without the fear of prejudice. That is a collective ambition we have across the House, and one that we have to work day in and day out to make sure we deliver. But remembering where this can take us is part of that journey, which is why I think this bill and I think the Memorial Centre is absolutely key. Can I thank the member for Eastbourne for paying tribute to his constituency, Dorrit Oliver Wolfe, and for her legacy and her impact. There are so many survivors that have made such a huge contribution, that have continued to give, that have continued to remind us. And I hope that collectively we deliver this bill for them and we deliver the construction of this site. I'll move to the Father of the House. And look, the Father of the House is right. to point out that there have been issues about the location. There have been large debates about this, but I want to gently point out that there has been extensive consultation throughout the planning process. 4,500 responses were submitted to the planning application, and a planning inquiry was held publicly. So we have consulted, and we have heard, and we have listened. The issue of the location is increasingly settled, but there is work that we will continue to do with the community, with the council, to make sure that we get the design right. And critically, I point out to all members of the House, we protect the garden. So the site only takes up 7.5% of the area of the Victoria Tower Gardens. So we will do a huge amount of work to make sure that the Memorial Centre is absolutely aligned and consistent with that public park, and that critically we are doing work to enhance the park, including the playground. And let me end by sort of reflecting on the contribution for the member for North East Cambridgeshire and his plea for transparency. And we hear that. There is consensus, and we want to maintain that consensus, and that does require us to continue listening, to continue engaging, and to make sure that we are keeping the House updated. Any construction has difficulties going through planning, but also delivery. And our commitment is that because all members across this House have worked together to get this point, we will continue to update the House. And look, I would like to close, Madam Deputy Speaker, by underlining the Government's determination to ensure that the Learning Centre remains firmly focused on education about Holocaust and anti-Semitism. We will ensure that this determination is embedded in the future governance arrangements for the Memorial and Learning Centre, so that there can be no dilution or digression from this intent. And we do this because, as members across the House have raised and highlighted eloquently and passionately, in order to ensure that we remember this dark moment and that we learn the lessons of history so that this can never happen again. And I hope we can now move ahead as quickly as possible to establish the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre with the consent and the support of members across the House.
The question is that this House disagrees with the Lords in their Amendment 1. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. No. Minister to move that a committee be appointed to draw up reasons.
I beg to move that a committee be appointed to draw up reasons to be assigned to the Lords for disagreeing to their amendment. The Miatta, Fahnbulleh, Deirdre Costigan, Laura Kirk-Smith, Mark Seward, Peter Prinsley, Sir James Cleverly and Zoe Franklin be members of the committee. The Miatta Fahnbulleh be the chair of the committee. The three be the quorum of the committee. That the committee do withdraw immediately.
The question is that a committee be appointed to draw out reasons to be assigned to the Lords for disagreeing to their Amendment 1. That Miatta Fahnbulleh, Deirdre Costigan, Laura Kirk-Smith, Mark Seward, Peter Prinsley, Sir James Cleverly and Zoe Franklin be members of the committee. That Miatta Fahnbulleh be the chair of the committee. That 3 be the quorum of the committee. That the committee do withdraw immediately. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. That concludes consideration of the Lord's Amendment to the Holocaust Memorial Bill. We now move on to the programme motion to be moved formally.
I beg to move.
The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.